This week I'll be throwing and trimming a tall, angular porcelain vase. I'm also recording my narration in a slightly different way this week, so if you are a regular viewer, let me know what you think. And lastly, I won't post my normal video next Sunday. Instead I'll have a shorter, special announcement which will go live on Monday at 7 PM Greenwich Mean Time, and I cannot wait to share the news with you. Right, for these pots, I'm using reclaimed porcelain. This is essentially the trimmings and any leftover scraps from previously made pots, which I soak in water into a fine slurry and then spread this out on plaster bats, which absorb much of the excess moisture. Once this recycled porcelain has dried out enough, I can peel it off the bats and then spiral wedge it into a usable state like this. Initially, this reclaim feels as if it's almost too firm to wedge, but after getting it moving a bit, it really does soften up, but you can see just how hard I'm having to push at these initial stages. This process of spiral wedging mixes the clay thoroughly so it's one even texture throughout, whilst at the same time popping any air pockets that might remain in it, as these, if you encounter them when throwing on the wheel, can create some issues. But with all the clay wedged, I then weighed out a few lumps, each weighing about 900 grams if I remember correctly, which is about 2 pounds of clay. I tend to still use both metric and imperial measurements when weighing clay out. It's what we did in college, and during my apprenticeships too, and there's something about a pound weight which is just so useful, despite how useless it is in most other situations. But at least those of you across the pond don't have to convert the weights I speak about. Once the porcelain has been weighed out, I then spiral wedge each lump once again, just to make sure the weighed out pieces, as sometimes additional clay is added to these lumps, is all well and truly knitted together. And I finish these in such a way that they have a rounded base and a sort of conical top. This way when they're thrown against the wheel, no air can be trapped underneath them, and the tapering top section lends itself to being centered easily. Before centering the clay properly, I begin by coning it up and down 2 or 3 times. This causes the particles of clay to align, making the lump of clay feel more plastic, as if it's a bit easier to throw. Sometimes when you first throw a ball of clay on the wheel, even if it's been thoroughly wedged, you'll feel as if there's something just off inside that lump, be it a slight inconsistency in texture or a minuscule undulation somewhere inside. It's hard to describe the feeling really, yet after coning it up and down numerous times, you'll feel the clay run more smoothly beneath your hands. Coning like this is also said to help prevent cracking from occurring, which, when working with porcelain, which is perhaps already a bit more susceptible to things like that, is very helpful. Now the coning's complete, I'll manoeuvre the spinning piece of clay into a more appropriate shape for the next step, which is opening the lump up and forming the base. So once the top has been flattened, I'll use my thumb and index finger to push right into the middle, and once pushed deep enough, I drag them both out horizontally to form the base of the pot. And as this is porcelain, I'll spend a few more seconds just compressing the internal base, which I do in the hope of preventing cracks from occurring on the base itself. I then dig my knuckle in on the outside, which is met on the inside with my fingertips pushing out, and together, for this initial pull at least, they pinch together and pull the clay up into a conical shape. And often to lubricate the walls, I'll just scrape the slip off the wheel and position it back onto the pot. For these next pulls, I'm using a sponge, and from the outside I push in, whilst from the inside my fingertips are pushing out slightly above where the sponge is pressing on the outside. My fingertips on the inside create the bulge you can see, and the soaked sponge I hold with my right hand is essentially just lifting that up, forcing the clay through a slightly smaller gap between my fingers, which thins it out as it's pulled upwards. Between pulls, if I feel like the clay is beginning to splay out too much, I'll collar it into a simple straight vessel before beginning the next pull. And as I force the clay up, I move at a very slow and steady, even rate. I don't change the speed of my wheel, and I try my best to keep my 2 hands at the exact same position relative to each other as they travel up the walls of porcelain. And now with the walls feeling relatively even from top to bottom, I'll insert my left hand into the cylinder to begin shaping it. I begin by doing some gentle pulls, directing the clay outward this time to form the angular lower section of this pot. Next I collar in the waist and neck. As next I'll be throwing this thicker top section, into a more flared rim. And now, instead of using my knuckle on the outside, I'm using my fingertips instead, but they more or less do the exact same job. I'll then reach in and do the same thing again, as I still had some porcelain to work with. And at the top of each pull, I very gently release my fingers from the spinning clay. As if you take them off quickly or pinch through the rim, it can massively distort the top. And now that the base shape of the pot is there, I can begin tidying off the outside with a sharp metal kidney. My left hand is inserted in the pot, bracing it so that the pressure applied with the tool with my right hand doesn't pull the vessel off center. If I could reach my hand all the way down, I would, but this works in these situations as long as the clay walls aren't too thin. As inserting my hand caused this top section to deform somewhat, I just define its shape again before removing the slip away from the outside of the vase. I then press the straight metal edge into the porcelain to remove the slippy layer that covers its surface. This neatens the shape up, although in theory you could just turn all these slippy marks away, but the pot will dry much faster when it's all removed, which means you get to trim it sooner. I then fixed a slight irregularity that was in the rim, and then used a long sponge on a stick to remove any water or slip that remains inside the pot, and this is incredibly important when throwing with porcelain, as if the base were to dry out at a different rate compared to the rest of the body, as it was left with a pool of slip over it. That's another cause for S-cracks to occur in the bottom. I then slid a wire beneath the pot, separating it from the wheel, and then with dry hands I could easily pluck the piece away and set it aside. After throwing numerous vases, and at the end of the day, I give my Roda HMT 600 a quick clean before heading home and letting these pieces sit overnight to firm up and become leather hard. I use a variety of trimming tools when turning porcelain. These first three are extraordinarily sharp tungsten carbide tools made by Phil Poperka of Bison. I adore these, although don't get your hopes up, as getting a hold of them is practically impossible these days, as last I heard his waiting list was more than a year and a half long. Although he does do occasional random drops on his Etsy, and that's how I managed to score a random set of 4 tools recently, so it's worth keeping an eye on it. I also use these turning tools made by my friend and potter Jae-Jun Lee. They feel like surgeon's tools, and they also have very fine, delicate tungsten carbide blades, so I only use these with porcelain, whereas the Bison trimmers work fine with stoneware. And lastly, I use this one-off trimmer I have made by Spencer Pen here in the UK. It has a lovely smooth handle and a very fine sharp blade, and I tend to use it just for finishing the surfaces of my porcelain pots, as it leaves them with such a crisp, smooth finish. And then there's the tool I'm probably asked most about, which is my trusty nylon spinner, which has a ball bearing inside it between the black and white parts, and it's used to place onto the bases of the pots I'm trimming to push them down against the wheel so they don't potentially jump up as I'm working. In the past though, I've used this bottle cap on the right. It more or less does the same job and distributes the weight being pushed down evenly across the base of the pot you're trimming, although it is much less comfortable to use. But essentially any flat, round thing, which has a surface your finger can rest comfortably on, will sort of do the same job. Anyhow, I'll leave links to all of these as best I can down in the description below, although it's worth noting that they aren't all just readily available, and you may have to contact the makers to place an order. Once the pot is entirely leather hard, I brush some water over the base of the pot, and then quickly tap center it. The water, in combination with the friction of the pot being pushed into the middle, creates slip which sticks the pot down. And then I use just the very corner of a rubber kidney just to create a seal around the base, pushing the porcelain against the metal. With both of these, the pot should be firmly stuck in place, but there is always the chance that the piece might dislodge as you're turning, which is why you'll often see my left hand perched somewhere on the pot. With my fingertips, I'll easily be able to sense if the pot begins to come off center or if it begins to shake or rattle, which is a sign it's coming loose. My right hand holds the trimming tool, but as I work, you can see that both my hands are connected by resting the thumb of my right hand on the wrist of my left. When you're trimming, you want to try and stabilize your arms as much as you physically can, especially your turning hand. So I grip the tool tightly, I rest my forearm on the plastic of the wheel tray, and normally I'm slightly leaning my upper body weight onto this arm too, all to anchor it down securely, so the porcelain has as little influence as possible over the movement of the blade. And ultimately you want to hold the blade so strongly that even if an undulation is somewhere spinning around in the wall of the pot, the sharp blade of your tool just rips through it, removing it, instead of that irregularity taking control and causing your blade to move with it as the pot rotates. As for hand positioning on the tool itself, and I spoke about this in a recent video, you don't want to hold the tool too loosely and from the end, like this, as you'll have very little control, as you won't be able to dig the tool into the clay with nearly enough pressure. So instead, you want to hold it much closer to the blade, and sometimes I even position my thumb on the blade itself. And the same goes for these cheaper steel tools. I rest my forearm on the tray, lean my upper body weight down onto the arm, I'll grip the tool firmly, close to the blade, and only then will I start to trim. And you want to make sure that the pot is spinning quite quickly before you make any contact with the tool whatsoever. As I trim higher up the pot, I do have to lift my forearm off the wheel tray, but I'm still digging my right elbow into my torso, which again adds stability. In terms of the wheel's speed, I tend to turn it quite quickly for this process. If you go too slowly, not only will the process end up taking too long, but you also have less control to some degree, as you'll be more inclined to let the blade of your tool follow any undulation there might be in your pot. Right, with all of that technique discussed, let's get back to the pot at hand. With the lowest portion trimmed, I'll now work my way up from bottom to top, refining the shape, thinning out the walls, and making sure the edges are nice and sharp wherever the angles change on the pot. And from time to time I'll reach inside with my right hand to feel what the cross section is like, and so I know just how much more I can trim away. J. Lee's tools are perhaps the hardest ones to use, but they leave such smooth, buttery surfaces, and they remove porcelain with such ease, which means you barely have to press in with them at all. I don't use these with any clay that contains grog, as hard particles in a clay body can chip the very fine blades these have. And it means they're sort of a treat to use, as I tend to work with porcelain less than I do stoneware, and I'm always looking forward to turning a few pots with these. But each trimming tool does have its purpose, and as so often my pots are made up of many straight planes, this particular bison turning tool with the long flat edge is wonderful at not only trimming these, but it's also very useful for more delicate work, such as defining the angle between the shoulder and the neck of this pot. If I'm able to, I do also sometimes finish the interior forms of my pots. I felt like the throwing rings were a bit too severe on the inside of the neck, so I just skimmed over the worst of them using the sharp edge of a metal kidney. And then, as I didn't want the rim to appear so block-like, I turned the lip to more of a beveled edge, creating a finer lip, which visually makes the entire pot feel as if it is lighter, as opposed to the more angular lip it had earlier, which makes the pot appear as if it's a bit more hefty. And then lastly, just to really smooth over these surfaces, I use Spencer's trimmer just to make sure all the wall's angles are perfectly flat. I then slide a sharp metal knife underneath the pot, separating it, and I pour out any trimmings there might be trapped inside. And before I place the pot upside down so that I can trim the base, I wipe clean the wheel head so there's no specks of porcelain that might embed themselves into the rim. I then very gently tap center the vase, and then I secure it down with 3 lumps of porcelain, which I position very carefully as not to deform the rim of the pot, as if one is pushed in too much, you could easily make an oval out of the round top. I then place the spinner, made by Richard Carter, onto the top, through which I push down really firmly to hold the pot in place. I trim away that leftover skirt of clay and then neaten up the area it once was. And then work on the very bottom can begin. And even though I've removed the spinner, I'm still always pushing down on the base, be it with my fingertip or even the blade itself. And as I'm trimming, I'll occasionally just push on the base, and if it gives in and just bows a tiny bit, I know it's time to stop trimming. But as long as it feels sturdy and solid, I'll keep trimming the base down. I then use a slightly more blunt trimming tool. This is one of my cheap stainless steel tools, just to turn away a beveled edge. And I use this tool as it leaves quite a burnished surface, in a way my tungsten carbide trimmers don't. And then I stamp my maker's mark into the porcelain. The pot is now more or less finished until the next steps can begin, but I can't glaze this piece until it's been bisquified in my electric kiln to 1000 degrees Celsius. It's a really simple, elegant form, which I'm either going to glaze white, like this, or black. And I really can't wait to begin my next round of glazing and firing. I have a few new glazes I want to test, and lots of porcelain vases to coat them on. I'm still getting used to this Roda HMT 600. It's lovely so far, and the seat is really especially comfortable. But the motor is just a tiny bit louder, and I hope that isn't too noticeable in my videos. Like I mentioned before, I won't be releasing a video next Sunday. Instead, I'll be releasing a shorter special announcement video on the Monday, which is February 13th. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want any teasers on what this secret project might be, I'll be sharing a few things on my Instagram over the coming week. Right, now to clean this wheel.